Hi, I'm Rowena. My parents bought my twin sister a lake house for graduation. Me? I got a smile and silence. But that wasn't the first time they made me feel like a guest in my own family. It's just the one they couldn't hide. They used my name to get that house. My ideas to build her cafe. My dream. With her name on it. And then I won the lottery. With a ticket they threw in the trash. You ever wonder what happens when the quiet one finally stops being quiet? The room was blooming with pastel colors, white roses curling up on the edges of napkins, and strings of silver balloons that spelled out one name only. Congratulations, Maris. Her name shimmered from the banners, from the menu cards, even the printed cake topper. I scanned the space again, but there wasn't a single trace of me. Not a single shared memory. Not even a "to our daughters" kind of sentiment. Maris stood at the front of the Lakeview Lodge banquet room in a white sheath dress, grinning like she'd just won a pageant. Maybe she had. In a way, she always did. Our parents stood beside her, Evelyn in her signature beige and pearls, Warren with one hand on her shoulder, looking proud in the way he never looked at me. The guests, mostly extended family and neighbors, clapped as my mother raised her glass. "I know we all came here to celebrate a milestone," she began, her voice smooth like a practiced MC. "And as parents, we wanted to do something special for our Maris. Something meaningful." The words drifted around me like fog. I had a weird hunch where this was going, but part of me still hoped, irrationally, that there'd be something for me too. Even a nod, a glance, a damn cupcake. Evelyn smiled wider. "Maris, we're giving you the keys to your future. Your very own lake house on Beaver Lake. Paid in full." Cheers erupted. Camera phones flew up. A cousin squealed. Someone yelled, "No way!" I sat at a side table near the water station, holding a glass of lukewarm punch. My fingers tightened around the cup. Every eye was on her, and none of them blinked my way. Maris gasped, hands clasping her cheeks. "Mom! Dad! Are you serious?" "Of course we are, baby," Warren said, pulling her into a hug. "You've earned it." I waited. I kept waiting. For a second announcement. A second key. Even a joke. And Rowena gets the boat. Something dumb but sweet. But Evelyn walked past my table, patted my shoulder like I was a coworker who forgot to RSVP. She leaned in and whispered, "You'll get there. When you've earned something." That was it. No speech, no name on the banner, no gift, no cake. Just silence. My own sister didn't even notice. Later that night, I sat on the edge of my old twin bed in the room that used to have posters and baking books, now stripped bare like it had been waiting for me to move out and vanish. I traced the chipped wood of the dresser, the one I'd painted lavender in 9th grade. My trophies, local baking competitions, school honors, had been stored in boxes in the attic for years, while Maras's ribbons hung proudly along the staircase wall. I thought about all the times I'd quietly hoped for some acknowledgement. When I made honor roll every semester and got told, well, Maris had tougher classes. When I baked a wedding cake for Aunt Libby's reception, and no one even remembered to reimburse me for the ingredients. Now the cherry on top? Maris had plans to open a wellness cafe. In the lake house. My dream, a cozy lakeside bakery, turned into a sanitized smoothie bar with eucalyptus towels and kale chips. And they were funding her fully. Later, out in the backyard during golden hour photos, I was adjusting the strap of my dress when the photographer waved me aside. "Let's just do the parents and Maris for this one," he said, not even glancing at me. I stood there, a few feet away, watching them huddle together, all smiles and sunshine. Evelyn adjusted Maris's hair. Warren kissed her temple. A perfect little frame. Their ideal family. Not forgotten. Deleted. By the time the sun dipped behind the trees, I'd slipped away without a word. I drove aimlessly until I ended up parked near the edge of Beaver Lake, where the house, her house, stood like a smug promise of everything I was never meant to have. My phone buzzed. Group chat. "Evelyn, Thanks everyone for coming to Maris's big day. So proud of her. No mention of me, not even a typo. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared out at that stupid house, the water glinting behind it like a punchline. I reached back and popped the trunk. My old duffel bag sat there, half packed with clothes and my baking tools. Just in case. What would happen if I just drove away and didn't come back? The engine had long cooled by the time I finally drove away from the lake. I didn't go home that night. Not really. I ended up at the apartment I shared with two girls I barely saw, changed into sweatpants, and collapsed into bed with my shoes still on. I didn't check my phone again. I didn't unpack. 2 days passed in a kind of slow drift. I didn't call anyone. No one called me. The group chat stayed quiet on my end, but I watched the messages pile up. Maris posting updates about her new beginning. Evelyn commenting with strings of heart emojis. That morning, I made coffee in silence, watching the steam rise like fog off a cold lake. My hands moved on instinct, measuring, stirring, but I didn't actually bake anything. I didn't want to. Around noon, I opened Instagram. I shouldn't have, but I did. Maris had posted a reel, a walkthrough of the new wellness space, soft piano playing, white curtains billowing, an oak countertop identical to the one I'd sketched 3 years ago. Her caption read, "From vision to reality, share Lakeview life." The logo, the layout, even the handwritten font was the same as the one I used when I mock-designed my dream bake cabin on Canva. And then I saw it, my words. A line I'd whispered over dinner one night, too shy to say it louder. Home is where you can taste your memories. I felt like someone had punched the air out of my lungs. My mouth opened, but nothing came. I closed the app and stared at the blank counter. My recipe notebook, the one I hadn't opened in months, sat nearby. Closed, shut tight like a wound. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just stood still for a long time. Hours later, I walked down to the corner store for no real reason. I passed the old printer shop on Haywood Street, the kind that still does trifold menus and birthday banners. A new flyer caught my eye in the window. Grand opening, Lakeview Organic Cafe, mindful eating by the water. I stepped closer. The menu listed a memory scone, lemon thyme with a cardamom glaze. My recipe, a twist on my grandmother's old Sunday treat. Another item called Sunday Morning Muffins. Same name I used in my college bake sale lineup. I picked up a flyer from the holder and turned it over. There it was, a stylized quote in gold foil. Mine. I didn't rip it. I didn't march inside and make a scene. I folded it slowly, creasing the edges with the flat of my thumb, and slid it into my coat pocket. That walk home felt different. On the way, a memory pulled at me, one I hadn't touched in years. It was our 10th birthday. Mary's had begged for a princess party. I didn't care much. I just wanted matching dresses. We used to have those. Matching clothes, matching cups, matching bedtime stories. But that year, they gave her a brand new ruffled dress in cotton candy pink. I got nothing. Evelyn told me, "You've always had more of a tomboy thing, right? Jeans are your vibe." I remember watching Maris spin in the backyard, people clapping like she was on stage. I stood next to the fence wearing last year's jeans, hands shoved in the pockets. A neighbor asked, "Aren't you twins?" I pretended I didn't hear. Even back then, I understood something they never said out loud. We might have been born on the same day, but we weren't growing up in the same story. Back in the apartment, I finally opened the recipe book. On the inside cover was a sketch I made in college. A lakeside bakery with tall windows and an herb garden out front. It wasn't fancy. It was mine. I had shown it to Mom once. She chuckled and said, "That's cute, honey. But who's gonna buy bread that fancy in a town like this?" Apparently they would, as long as Maris was the one selling it. Later that evening, I sat by the window, the flyer still folded in my hand. I looked out at the street, watching people pass by, living lives that weren't borrowed. I whispered the word out loud. Just once. Enough. I didn't need to yell it. I didn't need to post it. I just needed to mean it. I left the flyer on the windowsill and went to wash the breakfast dishes, not because they were many, but because it gave my hands something to do while my brain sorted through the mess. The sponge dragged across the plate in slow, steady circles. One plate, then a mug, a spoon. When I reached for the trash bag under the sink, the one I'd been meaning to toss since the night of the graduation party, I felt something rigid inside. A small envelope, slightly torn and folded in on itself. I pulled it out, set it on the counter. It was the cheap paper pack I'd filled with scratch-offs and slipped into a card for my parents. A thank you for everything kind of gesture. A peace offering, I guess. Of course, it never got opened. I don't even know why I scratched it. Maybe out of spite or boredom. But I did. 3 identical symbols. I blinked and looked again. No mistake. Then I flipped it over to check the barcode, like I'd seen people do on gas station counters. The instructions were clear. This one wasn't a joke prize. I had to reread it 3 times. My legs felt suddenly weak, and I leaned against the counter, gripping the edge with both hands. It wasn't life-changing in a lottery fantasy kind of way, but it was enough. Enough to stop working weekends at the diner. Enough to open a business account. Enough to pay the culinary school term I'd never imagined affording. I laughed. Not the happy kind. More like the kind you make when a storm breaks and you're already soaked to the bone. I laughed until I had to sit down, and I didn't call them. Not Evelyn, not Warren, not Maris. Instead, I opened my laptop and made an appointment with a local advisor, someone who specialized in new businesses. Then I emailed the registrar at the Culinary Institute I'd bookmarked years ago but never dared apply to. I sent my documents, paid my first term in full. Then I browsed Craigslist and found a second-hand mixer from a bakery closing out in Brevard. I messaged the seller and arranged pickup. It had a few scratches and a dent on the side. That felt right. I didn't want everything to be new. I wanted to remember the feeling of making something from what no one else thought was worth keeping. Later that night, I made tea and sat in the kitchen. I opened the drawer above the oven and pulled out a small round metal tin. One I used to keep sewing needles in. I slipped the winning ticket inside and stuck a bright pink sticky note on the lid. They didn't scratch it. I did. And just like that, something inside me unlatched. I wasn't waiting anymore. Funny thing, about 2 hours later, my phone lit up. Voicemail, Evelyn. Her voice was measured, that polite coldness she used when she didn't want to sound like she was accusing me of something, but still wanted to imply I owed her a call. Hey, Ro. Just checking in. Haven't heard from you. We're still family, you know. Don't shut us out. I didn't hit play a second time. I didn't save the message. I just deleted it and got up to wash my cup. The next morning, I woke early. Not because I had to, but because my brain was still buzzing. I hadn't slept well. Not after that voicemail. I couldn't stop replaying her tone, that polite frost Evelyn always wrapped her real intentions in. It was just past 7 a.m. when I left the apartment, a thermos of coffee in one hand, class notes in the other. The walk to the culinary school downtown was short, maybe 15 minutes, but I always liked giving myself more time. I didn't rush anymore, not now. As I rounded the corner near the bodega across from the school's entrance, I saw him again. Same tan windbreaker, same tired sneakers, same half-smoked cigarette hanging from his lips like it wasn't supposed to be noticed. He didn't make eye contact, but his shoulders twitched when I passed. Subtle, not slick. The third time this week. I stopped, turned around, and walked straight up to him. Lose something? I asked. He blinked like I'd spoken another language. No, just waiting for my niece, he muttered, but his voice cracked on niece. I tilted my head. Which school does she go to? His silence was answer enough. Then he gave it up. Your mom just asked me to keep an eye, that's all. She said you've been making choices that worry her. Wanted to make sure you were safe. That word made my jaw clench. She paid you to stalk me under the excuse of safety? He didn't answer. just shrugged as if that made it fine. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just walked away. When I got to class, I couldn't focus. The sauce reduction instructions blurred. I fumbled with the measuring scales. My instructor noticed but didn't say anything. He just watched, like he sensed I was balancing more than flour and sugar. Later, during my break at the bakery, I checked my phone. Another missed call from Evelyn. For some reason, I picked up when she called back again. Her voice filled the line without pause. Maris got the permits. The cafe is opening next week. The decorator says the lakefront view makes the whole space feel elevated. Don't you think that's just so her? I didn't answer. She didn't wait for me to. Anyway, we're still figuring out the logo. Dad thinks it should be cursive, but I told him sans serif feels more modern. Silence. Then she asked, almost as an afterthought. And you? Still baking? I got into culinary school, I said. A pause. Well, at least we let you stay in that apartment after high school. It's something. That sentence sat in my ear like ash. She hung up before I could respond. Back home that night, I logged into my cloud to update my project notes. That's when I saw it. 3 documents recently opened. All my architectural drafts. The Lakeview remodel file, too. The timestamps were from weeks ago. I hadn't touched them. Someone else had. I checked the IP log. It matched my mother's old account. She must have accessed it through an old shared device from back when I still lived under her roof. They hadn't just dismissed my dreams. They were still digging in them. I didn't panic. I didn't scream. I copied every single file to a flash drive, uploaded another copy to a legal archive, changed every password, set up 2-factor authentication. I wasn't afraid of them stealing anymore. I was preparing for what would happen when they tried. The next day, I left a message. Just once. You can stop watching. I know you've been tracking me. I know you opened my designs. If anything I created ends up somewhere it doesn't belong again, you'll wish I had just walked away. That was all. No signature, no warmth. They'd know who it was from. 3 weeks after sending that message, I found myself at a downtown Asheville launch party for a local food blog. I wasn't on the guest list, just tagging along with Jess, one of the girls from my baking class. She said the event might be good for networking, and I figured blending in with a crowd would feel easier than staying home, counting everything my family had taken. The cafe hosting the party was newly renovated, with brushed brass fixtures and reclaimed wood shelves stacked with gluten-free loaves and mason jars of basil lemonade. The kind of place that wanted to be rustic without giving up its polished image. Familiar, in a way I didn't like. I had just grabbed a toothpick skewer of beet hummus crostini when I heard the host clink a glass for attention. We're so excited to feature a dish tonight by one of our favorite up-and-coming food creatives, Maris. Please enjoy her signature balsamic fig tartlets, available at her new cafe next month. The room clapped. I didn't. My body froze, teeth locked around that stupid skewer. Balsamic fig tartlets. No. No, no, no. That was mine. The crust recipe, the almond flour ratio to butter, the touch of rosemary in the reduction, the garnish of sea salt that gave it contrast. Even the name. Signature, they'd called it. But the signature wasn't hers. I didn't stay to hear her speak. I backed out of the room, past the servers carrying trays, past the couple taking selfies under the neon Local First sign. I walked for 3 blocks before I stopped and leaned against the side of an old brick bookstore. My hands trembled, but not from shock. I'd felt this one coming. 2 months earlier, I had let her into my kitchen, again. She'd asked to play around with some plating ideas. I'd made fig compote that night, just messing with texture. She'd said, "This would be cute at the cafe if I ever did sweets." I hadn't thought much of it. I was too tired from class. I labeled the batch with flavor notes, little sticky tags, my shorthand, ratios, prep times. Turns out, she didn't want help. She wanted a test kitchen. Back at my apartment, I didn't scream or call or throw things. I opened my phone and pulled up the photo log from that night. Time-stamped. Ingredients visible. My notes in the corner of the frame. Then I went to my email history, found the thread where she'd asked about fig pairings, and I'd shared flavor theories. I started a new folder on my desktop and called it Lake House Lies. Inside it, I saved photos of every dish I'd prepped, voice memos I'd left myself while testing, copies of text exchanges. I backed it up in 2 places. At 10:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. Maris, voicemail. Hey, I used your tart idea. Just one time, Ro. It's not a big deal. Let's not make this ugly, okay? No apology. Just, don't make this ugly. I didn't reply. Instead, I printed out a recipe sheet, formal formatting, ingredients measured to the gram. I filled out the copyright form online and mailed the whole thing in with tracking. Just in case. Because just in case didn't sound paranoid anymore. It sounded like something a woman does when she finally knows better. The week after Maurice's voicemail, I stayed busy. I focused on baking orders from a few new clients I picked up online. Nothing huge, but enough to feel the slow burn of independence. I also submitted a microloan application to the local credit union. My plan was to buy a small used trailer, fix it up into a mobile test kitchen. Asheville had the crowd for it, and I was finally ready to move on my own timeline. 3 days later, the call came. "We're sorry, Ms. Granger," the woman on the phone said, her voice too chipper for what came next. "Your loan was denied due to an outstanding mortgage on record. It looks like you already carry a sizable liability." I blinked at the wall. "A what?" She repeated herself. I asked for documentation. She emailed the full summary within the hour. And there it was, printed plain as daylight. A mortgage tied to a lakefront property on Beaver Drive. My name was listed as co-borrower. I don't remember putting down the phone, but I do remember the sound of the paper tearing under my grip right before I dropped it on the counter and grabbed my keys. The credit union sat on a quiet corner off Hendersonville Road. I walked in like I had somewhere to be in 5 minutes, because if I didn't keep moving, I might not move at all. Inside, a man named Brad met me with a practiced smile and a printout of the original application. Signature, Rowena Granger. Only, it wasn't mine. The handwriting was close. Not perfect. And the witness line? My father's. Brad offered to get the loan officer who processed it. I told him no thanks and left before I could throw up in the fake ficus next to the front desk. Back at home, I sat down with a yellow folder and started building the timeline. Pulled my last credit report. Took screenshots of every flagged transaction. Compared signature samples from my license, bank forms, my school registration. They hadn't just stolen from me. They had used me because I had the better credit. Because I'd kept mine clean, paid down a card at a time while juggling rent and classes. I contacted a woman named Patrice at my culinary school's small business clinic. She read through the paperwork and said quietly, "You know this is criminal, right?" I nodded. "And you know, if you don't take this to court, it sets a precedent. They'll do it again." That night, I filled out the civil complaint form. By the next afternoon, I walked into the courthouse and filed it. Financial fraud. Identity misuse. I checked the box for immediate family. The clerk didn't flinch, but I did. Inside. Not from fear. From finally realizing how far they were willing to go just to pretend I didn't matter. The community buzz started almost instantly. A neighbor posted on Facebook, "Pray for families in conflict. It's never too late to heal." Maris tweeted something vague about betrayal and loyalty. Evelyn, true to form, didn't hold back. She left me a voicemail, clipped and brittle. "You sue your own parents? For what? For helping you? You sound like a bitter little girl who doesn't understand how the real world works." I didn't respond. I sent my lawyer a list of witnesses instead. My professors, my advisor, even one former bank clerk I'd remembered helping Dad that year. A few nights later, while on break at the bakery, my phone vibrated until the table danced. Unknown number, voicemail, Maris again. "Hope you're happy, Ro. You've made this ugly." You always do. That same day, she posted a selfie captioned, "Betrayal never comes from strangers." She wasn't wrong. It just wasn't the slam dunk she thought it was. I muted her account, tossed my apron in the wash bin, and stepped out the back door. The air had cooled, sharp and clean like clarity. I walked to the corner bodega and paid my culinary school installment in cash at the Western Union kiosk, under my name, with my account, for my life. After the payment was made, I tucked the receipt in my bag and walked the few blocks to the bakery, not because I needed to be there, my shift had ended hours ago, but because I needed to breathe somewhere that didn't have my name on a lawsuit or a family crest nailed above the door. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, the whispers had gotten louder. People weren't even pretending to whisper anymore. At the grocery store, the post office, even the dog park, I could feel the same questions hanging in the air, like smoke from someone else's fire. Did she really sue her own parents? Over a house? No, it was more than that. Something about a loan, her name, something serious. The local art center was buzzing that Saturday night. Polished wood floors, cheap wine and plastic flutes, local musicians playing banjo near the snack tables. I hadn't planned on going, but a friend had begged me to show up, said it'd be good for my name to be seen in public again, attached to something other than family drama. I stood in the back of the gallery room, half shadowed by a sculpture shaped like a burnt whisk, when the slideshow began. Faces of small business owners, farmers, bakers, chefs, artisans, all celebrated for community entrepreneurship. Then came the slide. There they were, Evelyn, Maris, standing in front of the lake house. The title underneath, Evelyn Granger and Family, Generational Impact in Culinary Innovation. I blinked once. I knew that photo. It had been taken 2 years ago, during a family cookout I had prepped for, styled, and, yes, photographed. I had been in the original, only now I wasn't. They had cropped me out, pasted some flowering bush in my place. Clean, polished, like I'd never existed. People clapped. Someone beside me muttered, "What a lovely family." I didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't let a single muscle betray what was bubbling underneath. I left before the applause stopped. Back in my apartment that night, I peeled off my shoes like they were made of lead and slumped into the desk chair. The room glowed with the soft blue light of my laptop. That's when a notification popped up. An email forwarded from Maya, a girl I hadn't seen since high school. Found this. Thought you should know. Attached was a screenshot of an email chain dated 4 years back. Subject: Culinary Scholarship Consideration, Rowena Granger. From: Admissions Office. To Rowena Granger, email.com. The catch? It wasn't my email, it was Evelyn's. Her reply read, "Thank you for the opportunity, but Rowena has decided to pursue a more stable career path and will not be accepting the scholarship offer." I never saw that email, never even knew I'd been offered a spot. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. All those nights I thought I didn't make the cut. All those applications I thought got tossed because I wasn't good enough. Turns out, someone else had done the tossing for me. I didn't cry. I opened the Lake House Lies folder and created a new subfolder, Erased Opportunities. I added the scholarship email, labeled it SCH White 1, pulled up Maris's press release from the community gala, added the edited photo, IMG Doctored, created a spreadsheet, titled it History of Theft. Then I opened a new message to my lawyer. Subject: Subpoena Request, Maternal Email Archive. Body: Please begin the motion to request full access to all Granger family correspondence involving my name. Attached: Documentation, all of it. Later that night, I left the apartment to get some air. I didn't want to pace a hole through the floor. The fundraiser was still going. Lights danced across the roof of the Arts Center, and I could hear laughter drifting into the street. As I passed by the front entrance, I caught sight of Maris near the side stairs, chatting with some guy in a checkered shirt and fake charm. She saw me, froze. "Row!" she started, half walking toward me. "Can we not do this here?" I tilted my head, silent. She looked around, whispered, "Let's not make a scene, okay?" I stepped in close enough for only her to hear. "You don't even know what's coming yet," I said, "but it'll have your name on it, spelled correctly this time." And I walked away. After that final stare down outside the arts center, I didn't wait for anyone's reaction. I went home, pulled out my chef whites, and ironed them slowly, methodically, like I was pressing the memory of her voice out of the fabric. I didn't sleep much that week, not because of anxiety, there wasn't any left, but because I was too focused. Focused like a knife being honed. The Asheville Culinary Festival was coming, and I had secured a slot. Not through family connections, not from pity, just my portfolio, my pitch, my name. The morning of the showcase, the plaza was already buzzing by 8 a.m. Booths lined the sidewalks with handmade signage and seasonal herbs. The smell of roasted garlic and sourdough followed me as I hauled my prep crates to my assigned counter. No banners, no branded hats. Just me, my knives, and a dish no one would expect. It was an old recipe, something my grandmother once made for Sunday supper. I had rewritten it from scratch. No shortcuts, no stolen edits. I called it Reclamation Stew, a slow-cooked, layered blend of wild mushroom confit, smoked barley, and rosemary broth. Each component had its own label on the table: sacrifice, silence, and survival. When the judges walked up, clipboards in hand, I stood straight and waited. "What inspired this dish?" one of them asked, without looking up. I kept my voice even. "Some recipes are built on stolen ingredients," I said. "This one is mine." They wrote something down. I didn't ask what. From the corner of my eye, I spotted Evelyn and Maris near the second-row tent, standing under a shade cloth with sunglasses too big for sincerity. They watched, but didn't approach. Not yet. After I served the final plate and the crowd moved on, I walked toward them. I didn't raise my voice or fake a smile. I simply handed Evelyn a white folder, its seal unbroken. No greeting, no explanation. Inside were copies of the notarized copyright forms for all the recipes they'd pilfered. Screenshots of the bank loan Maris had fraudulently co-signed with my name. And, at the top, a printed record of the scholarship email Evelyn had answered on my behalf, posing as me. I'd added one note: "You have 72 hours to settle, or it goes public." I turned and left before they could say a word. The next morning, I woke to a call from the bank. The lake house was being flagged for foreclosure. Final warning. I opened my laptop, logged into my account, and wired the remaining balance. No memo, no signature, just clean numbers clearing a dirty debt. About an hour later, Evelyn texted a single question mark. I didn't reply. 2 days passed before Maris found me again. I was at Lila's cafe, reviewing a supply order on my laptop. She walked in like she'd been dragged by the wind, hair messy, eyes rimmed red, wearing the same hoodie from 2 days ago. "You did this," she hissed. "I've lost everything. My name, my place, the money, the house." I closed my screen slowly and looked her in the eyes. "I've lost everything. You happy now?" she asked again, louder. A few people glanced our way. I leaned forward slightly. "No," I said calmly. "I'm just done pretending you ever didn't know what you were doing." Her mouth opened, then closed. She blinked like she was trying to summon tears that had dried up days ago. I stood, gathered my things, and left without another word. Behind me, the door jingled once as it shut. I didn't look back when the door closed behind me. Didn't wait to see if Maris followed. I just walked 3 blocks, turned the corner onto Market Street, and headed straight toward the smell of yeast and cinnamon that had become my kind of peace. 3 months later, the bakery was mine. Fully licensed, modest, sun-drenched, and paid for in full under one name, mine. I'd chosen to renovate a small storefront on the edge of downtown, far enough from the lake house to never smell that water again, but close enough to hear praise when it finally came from strangers. Spring crept in slowly that year. Dogwoods bloomed along the sidewalks, their petals dusting the windowsills like powdered sugar. That morning, I stood behind the counter, reviewing the freshly printed seasonal menu. I had named each item with care, each one carrying a story that didn't need retelling. One caught my eye, newly added, right near the bottom. Lake House Pie, inspired by a memory, not a moment. And underneath, in small script, some memories shouldn't be sweet. Customers loved it. They never asked for the backstory. And I never offered it. That was part of the healing, keeping the recipe and letting go of the bitterness. Around mid-morning, I was at the back prepping dough when Nora, one of my teenage assistants, peeked around the flour rack. Ro, there's a couple people across the street, just standing there. I wiped my hands and walked to the front window. Across the road, Evelyn and my father stood near a lamppost. They didn't speak, didn't wave, just stood there like they were trying to summon courage they no longer owned. Dad took half a step forward. Evelyn tugged his sleeve, and they turned away. I didn't move, didn't cry. Just pulled the window latch closed and returned to kneading. That afternoon, a padded envelope arrived in my home mailbox. I didn't need to open it to know who it was from. Maris had always curled the tops of her letters like she was trying to make them prettier than they were. Her name was in blue ink this time, oddly formal. Inside, I assumed, was some last-ditch monologue. Apology, maybe, maybe not. I placed the envelope in a tin box with other artifacts I didn't need to revisit, shut the lid, slid it into the back of my desk drawer. That part of the story doesn't get rewritten, I whispered. Not this time. That evening, I stayed late to clean the bakery with my small crew. They'd become family without asking for it. People who didn't need to know your history to hold the door open when you had your hands full. As we dimmed the lights, Emma, our barista, surprised me with a cupcake and a song. "You didn't tell us it was your birthday," she teased. "It's not," I said, smiling. "Not technically, but it's the day I started over. That counts." I cut the cupcake into 6 slices and handed them around. "To chosen family," I said. No one needed further explanation. Right before locking up, a woman in a denim jacket ducked inside, blinking at the warm lights. She looked around slowly, breathed in deep. "This place feels like home," she said. I smiled and handed her a small menu card. "That's the idea. And maybe you've lived a little of this story too. Not the exact details. Maybe no lake house, no forged documents, but the quiet dismissals, the unspoken favoritism, the long wait for someone to finally see your worth. I know how it feels to be erased in plain sight. I know how it feels to keep showing up, hoping that one day someone would clap for you too. But here's what I learned. You don't need their applause to matter. You don't need their permission to build something beautiful. And sometimes, the best justice isn't revenge. It's peace. Real peace. The kind that comes from choosing your own voice over their expectations. So, if you're standing at the edge of something hard, a choice, a hurt, a silence, I want to remind you, your story still belongs to you. You get to finish it, not them. What about you? Have you ever had to walk away from someone you love to finally become who you are? Or maybe you're still trying to find that first step. Either way, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. Let me know where you're watching from, or just type 1 if this story touched something real in you. And hey, if this video made you feel seen, even just a little, don't forget to subscribe. We've got more stories coming, ones that'll remind you, you're not alone in what you've lived through. You're not broken, you're becoming.